Despite being a mobile game, the combat gameplay of Genshin Impact is quite intricate. I've made a few videos to try to explain all the advanced mechanics to teach people everything they could want to know to get the most out of their characters. But those videos regularly get comments saying that my attempt to explain team building both thoroughly and concisely is still too complex. And honestly, they're right. So, I've boiled Genshin combat down to the 3 most important gameplay elements to know to improve your characters right now.
Watching this video is nominally proven to increase your electoral destruction rate by 500%.
Number 1. How energy and elemental bursts work. Most characters in the game get the bulk of their value from their elemental bursts, so you're going to need to know how to cast it as often as possible. For that, your characters need to generate energy. Otherwise, when your burst is off cooldown, you'll just see their circle partially filled and not be able to cast it. For the most part, energy comes from energy particles, and energy particles are created when your characters hit with their elemental skills. For most characters, anyway. The energy particles float toward your character, and when collected, you get some energy. Energy particles are also often created when you defeat enemies or lower their health to a certain amount. And the Favonius weapons can also generate energy particles. When an energy particle is collected, every character on your team gets some energy. The character who actually collected the particle gets a higher percentage of energy than the other 3 characters on the team. Energy particles can be elemental and have an element indicated by their color, which often matches whatever character or enemy created them. Or they can be non-elemental or white, like those created by Favonius weapons. Characters get extra energy if the element of the elemental particles is the same as the character's element. I'll put the math for that on the screen if you want to know the exact numbers. So, knowing this, you can try to get more energy for the characters who need more of it by swapping them on-field to collect any particles that are generated, and potentially also put characters on the team who can generate the right elemental particles for a character who needs them. Now, you still might have trouble getting enough energy for characters who are particularly energy hungry, and the game has a solution for that in the form of the energy recharge stat. You can generally get this from weapons and artifacts. Incoming energy is multiplied by your character's energy recharge percentage. So, if you're having a lot of trouble getting energy to use a character's burst, you can try to cram as much energy recharge on them as possible, at least until you no longer have that issue. Unfortunately, for newer players, it might not be possible to get enough energy recharge stats early on with the limited resources you have access to. So, if you're getting annoyed that some of your characters don't work because they can't cast their bursts often enough, you can try to use the characters who don't really need their bursts to get work done. The team I'm using here has a few 4-star characters that fit that bill.
Stand with me.
With that, it's time for tip number 2, triggering reactions. The whole combat system of Genshin Impact is built upon elemental reactions, so you should be trying to trigger them. I have a lot of content diving into reaction mechanics, most notably a 3-minute short that quickly demonstrates every single reaction, and then a 47-minute video that explains almost every team archetype you can build to optimize for reactions. I don't want to rehash it all here, especially because this video is meant to be easy to digest. So let's start small. If you're attacking enemies and see this white damage text, that means you're doing physical damage, and that means you are not engaging with the elemental reaction system. So instead, take a look at your character options and see which of them have abilities that deal elemental damage. For sword, polearm, and claymore characters, that will usually require using their elemental skill or elemental burst. For catalyst characters, every attack will deal elemental damage. For bow characters, a lot of the time you'll want their skill or burst to do it, but if you charge your bow shot, then it will deal elemental damage. If you use your characters to deal different types of elemental damage and trigger reactions, you'll not only be more effective, but probably also have more fun than if you just mash the attack button. Let me show you some fun examples you can do with the characters you get for free. Here, you can toss Amber's Baron Bunny with her skill, then while it's waiting to explode, hit some enemies with Kaya's skill to apply Cryo. and quickly swap to Animo Traveler to grab them all with their skill and spread the cryo around. With good timing, Baron Bunny can explode on all of them and trigger Melt for double damage. Or, instead of Kaya, you can do something very similar with Lisa, triggering Overload instead, which is an extra hit of damage on the enemies. Then, if the ground is on fire and applies Pyro to enemies, you can use that with Kaya and Lisa to trigger those reactions. Or, if you have Barbara, do a charged attack on her to hit them with a Hydro AoE and perhaps deal double damage with Vaporize. You can also get Kole by clearing floor 4 of the Spiral Abyss. A simple reaction you can do with her is shoot an enemy with Amber's charged shot to apply Pyro, and then just keep shooting that same enemy with Kole's charged shot to apply Dendro to the Pyro, which triggers Burning, and then keeps refreshing the Burning with every hit. Also, if enemies get close enough to each other, the Burning can spread, and you might be able to hit and refresh them all at once with Kole's skill. As you can see, getting the most out of combat requires swapping between all of your characters, and that leads us to number 3, knowing your on-fielders and off-fielders. Some characters need to be the active character in order to do anything for the team, and we call them on-fielders because they need to spend most of their time on the field. But a lot of characters can swap in to activate an ability or a buff and then swap out, and that ability will persist even while they are not the active character. So we call them off-fielders because they provide their value even while they are off the field. Some characters can be both, depending on how you build and play them, but it's important to know which role you are playing them in for the team you are currently playing, because, of course, you can only have one active character at a time. So if you have 2 on-fielders, one of them is doing nothing while the other one is on-field. Early on, when you don't have many characters, you may just have to deal with multiple on-fielders being on the team, but you might still be able to use them to help you trigger different reactions. The significance of knowing your on-fielders and off-fielders is that you can then start trying to work out a rotation, where you cycle through your off-fielders' abilities and then stay on your on-fielder to deal damage. You can also factor in what we talked about earlier, with funneling energy particles to different characters as you swap between them, to try to get the most energy on the characters who need it. Rotations can get complicated, but we don't need to dig into the advanced concepts in this video. Just focus on having fun. When you want to get into the advanced stuff, well, like I said at the start, I've got a series of videos that dives into all the intricacies of Genshin's combat, so whenever you're ready, I'd love it if you gave them a look as well. But before that... Oops, I lied. I said 3 things, but I'm actually going to do 5. I only kinda lied though, because the first 3 are things you can put to use right this second. These last 2 involve farming resources and building characters, which takes some time. And the reason it takes time is because all meaningful progression requires spending resin, which is a time-gated resource that recharges slowly. 180 resin over the course of a day. So, number 4, spending resin efficiently and leveling up the right things for your characters. The first priority is leveling up your characters, because it will unlock more and more of their kit, like these passive talents and the ability to level up their 3 main talents. It'll also boost their stats and give you some Acquaint Fates. If you're really early in the game, your ability to level characters will still be gated by your adventure rank, so you can spread your resources out among multiple different characters. But if you're past all those restrictions, the question becomes, how high should you level a character? For characters you don't care that much about, leveling them to 70 will make them eligible for Imaginarium Theater, which, being that this is a combat guide, I figure I should mention as a consideration, but it's certainly not a top priority. Otherwise, getting characters you use to level 80 and ascending to Phase 6 will unlock all of their kit. Leveling characters to 90 is a personal choice and just depends on how many resources you're willing to spend on this one character. Because for the same price as leveling a character from 80 to 90, you could level a different character from 1 to 70. And depending on your current roster of characters, the latter might be significantly more useful to you. It's generally recommended to have 2 teams worth of characters ready to fight for the Spiral Abyss. But beyond that, it's up to you. There are some characters who gain basically nothing useful from levels or even ascensions, as well as some characters that gain way more from level 90 than others do. So that's something to look into if you want to optimize your spending, but that's outside the scope of this video. The second priority is the character's weapon. Most characters will want their weapon leveled as high as you can get it, all the way to 90, but there are exceptions. Weapon level increases its primary and secondary stats. So if for whatever reason you're using a weapon that doesn't provide useful stats, then leveling it won't be useful either. A common example is Thrilling Tales of Dragon Slayers. Most Catalyst off-fielders can use that weapon because of its passive effect, which is independent of its level. To increase the passive, you instead need to refine it, by combining multiple copies of it up to 5. As far as weapon XP, you technically could spend Resin at a forge to get it, but most people recommend against that, because you can also forge weapon XP from breaking rocks. Next are your character's talents. Most characters only use 2 or even just 1 of their talents. There's only a handful of characters that have any use for their normal attack talent. Off-fielders basically never normal attack, so they don't need it. And most on-fielders use their skill or burst talents when they attack, so leveling the normal attack talent doesn't actually do anything. Then, some characters gain nothing of value from skill talent levels. Tignari, for example. His skill's main benefit is to enable him to charge shot faster, and it doesn't get any more useful even at level 10. And likewise, some characters don't even care about their burst levels, like Fischl, whose burst is just there to cast her skill again. You'd probably want to consult individual character guides for all the specifics over at kachingmains.com. Leveling any such non-useful talent on a character would be a waste. As far as how high to level each talent, that's kinda like character level in that it just depends on how many resources you want to spend. Some good stopping points are level 6, since beyond that, levels require weekly boss drops. Otherwise, level 9 is a good stopping point, because going all the way to 10 requires a Crown of Insight, of which there are a limited number in the entire game, so you'll want to save those for your absolute best talents. The last thing is artifacts. Depending on how early in the game you are, you might not have access to any good artifacts, and farming for them isn't recommended before Adventure Rank 45, which is when you are guaranteed to get 5-star artifact drops from domains. You can still do a couple artifact domains just to get a set, since some artifact set bonuses are as powerful as the characters themselves, but you really don't want to spend all your resin trying to get better and better artifacts when you aren't even guaranteed to get a 5-star one. And even at AR45, when you are guaranteed, you should probably focus on all the other things I just mentioned first, because they are all guaranteed upgrades, whereas artifact farming is just another form of gambling. In any case, once you've got artifacts, you also need to level them up a bit. If they have stats that are really useful to your character, like for example energy recharge main stat on a Sans for some of those energy-hungry characters that we talked about at the beginning, then leveling them up is desirable. Leveling an artifact increases its main stat and gives it one more roll of one of its 4 substats, at random. Desperately hoping your artifact substat rolls go into good stats as you pour all your resin into getting artifact leveling fodder is basically the Genshin Impact endgame. Anyway, that leads me to the 5th and final tip in this video, which is knowing what stats your characters need. We already talked about one, which is energy recharge. Characters that need their bursts in order to be useful need to have enough energy recharge to use them. Energy recharge is literally the best stat in the game, until you have enough of it, and then any more of it is wasted. The exact amount can be calculated, but that's way more advanced than I want to get into, so just use the good old rule of thumb of, do I have my burst when I need it? If no, get more energy recharge. And that's about it. Moving on to what is probably the next most important stat. Stats. Crit. That's both crit rate and crit damage. If your character deals damage, then these will be the biggest increases to that damage. Unless they do their damage through one of the transformative reactions that add an additional hit to their attack, like Overload, Superconduct, Swirl, Bloom, Hyperbloom, Burgeon, Electrocharged, Burning, Shatter. What? Because those extra hits all ignore your crit stats. The lunar reactions are an exception, even though they also do the extra hit thing, because they are specially coded to actually factor in your crit stats. Anyway, you want to have twice as much crit damage as crit rate, all the way until crit rate hits 100%, because math. Another important damage stat is literally damage of whatever element your character deals. Unless they use any of the reactions I just named, including lunar reactions, because those all ignore damage percent too. But what they do want is elemental mastery. Any character who deals damage through elemental reactions likes to have some elemental mastery. But in addition to that, some characters' talents actually scale with elemental mastery, which means you want even more of it on them. So with that, let's get to the final point, which is talent scalings. You can check your character's useful talents and see what stat they actually want, because it might not be attack even on a damage dealer. Plenty of characters actually scale their damage off of HP or defense, or, like I said, elemental mastery. Giving them a bunch of a stat they don't use is effectively worthless. You could argue that sticking HP or defense on them will make them more survivable though, and that's good, right? Maybe, but just dodge. Secret tip number 6. Dodge! No, but seriously, some character animations are way longer than they need to be, so canceling them with a dodge can speed up your abilities and result in higher DPS. Okay, I think that about does it for the most important tips you need to know to start diving into Genshin's combat system. Hopefully this video can both help new players and maybe entice some long-term players who weren't into the combat to maybe enjoy it a little more. Either way, if you like what you see, feel free to subscribe for more, and also check out my other guide videos if you're looking for even more in-depth information. And if you're a new player, once you get caught up with the story, maybe check out some of my lore videos to see how Genshin's lore is just as intricate as its combat system. But either way, thanks for watching.